I'm the type of person who needs to understand something to truly believe it. So when I first heard of manifestation, I thought it was delusional, pseudoscience. The idea that you could think things into being, achieve the most unbelievable success without any effort, felt like wishful thinking. But the more I read about it, the more I realized it's just a catchy term that describes a pattern that we all see in our own lives and in people around us. And that made me wonder, what if manifestation isn't some magical law? What if it's just psychology? I'm going to break down what I've learned and what has actually worked for me in ways you can actually understand and successfully implement even as a skeptic. This is Ego Edit, where we explore why we do what we do and engineer our minds to work in our favor. Because every interesting idea has a grain of truth to it. Today, let's explore what's really happening beneath the surface of manifestation. Have you ever noticed that people who truly believe something about themselves, whether good or bad, tend to lead that life? They see what they believe, they attract what they expect, and we often perceive them as what they say about themselves. When most people talk about manifestation, they're thinking of things like vision boards, daily affirmations, the universe bringing things to you if you're optimistic. But here's the issue. That definition of manifestation treats the mind like a genie. Wish hard enough and your life suddenly changes from belief alone. But in reality, most change doesn't come from hoping. It comes from action. And no matter how delusional or down the manifestation rabbit hole you are, deep down, you know that. So now that we've admitted this fundamental truth, let's start with the basics. What is manifestation and how does it work? Psychologists have known for decades that your brain is designed to filter reality. Have you heard of the reticular activating system? It's a network of neurons in your brain that acts like a filter between your conscious and subconscious minds. With billions of sensory inputs hitting you every second, your brain uses cognitive shortcuts called heuristics to decide what's worth noticing. This is why you don't see everything happening around you. But when you decide that something matters, like getting a job, finding love, or just buying a specific car, suddenly you start noticing it everywhere. This is what the manifestation community calls synchronicities, or evidence that your manifestation is coming in. But this doesn't happen because these things magically appeared. You notice them because your mind finally made them relevant. Because your brain doesn't show you the truth. It shows you what it thinks matters to you. This is an example of top-down processing. Your beliefs and expectations shape what information your brain lets in. It's not that the world changes, but that your brain selectively highlights whatever confirms your goals or fears. As the father of American psychology, philosopher William James, said in 1895, belief creates the actual fact. Not because believing something creates magic, but because it guides behavior, attention, and your interpretation of reality. It's not magic, it's mechanics. Manifestation is not a new concept. Long before psychology as a science existed, philosophers were already playing with this idea. German Enlightenment thinker Immanuel Kant believed that we don't experience the world as it is, but rather as it is filtered through the mind. In the 18th century, he wrote that all human perception is shaped by internal frameworks, like space, time, causality, and these structures influence how we interpret reality. In other words, our beliefs are like sunglasses we didn't know we were wearing. Today, science confirms that the brain doesn't show us everything, only what we assume matters. That's where the law of assumption comes in. I know you've heard of Neville Goddard, the 20th century mystic everyone in the manifestation community references constantly. He believed that our assumptions create our reality. You are already that which you want to be, and your refusal to believe this is the only reason you do not see it. You don't have to believe in magic to understand this, because from a psychological perspective, Your assumptions about yourself and the world around you become your self-concept. In psychological terms, your self-concept is your internal blueprint of who you are. According to research in social psychology, this blueprint affects everything from your confidence to your decisions. So your self-concept determines what opportunities you notice, how much rejection you tolerate before giving up, what level of success you feel is possible to reach. Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist and one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Jung believed our internal traumas, unresolved wounds, and archetypes, which are images in the collective unconscious of all human beings, shape how we see the world. In modern psychology, this overlaps with the concept of implicit memory, or emotional memories stored without our awareness. These shape our reactions and influence what we trust, pursue, or avoid. So if deep down you believe, "I'll never find love," money is hard to make, success is for someone else, those beliefs unconsciously shape your actions, conversations, mood, and decisions over and over again. So when someone manifests self-sabotage because of a hidden fear of success, they're not being negative. They're repeating unprocessed patterns. That's a psychological explanation of manifestation. Not magic, but what we unintentionally and unconsciously do to ourselves. Now, you probably see where I'm going. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest who you are. When people say act as if it's done, what they mean is that you should embody a new identity that aligns with the outcome you're trying to create. In psychology, this is called identity-based change. It's how people go from trying to get healthy to becoming someone who doesn't hate the gym, from desperately chasing love to becoming someone who others respect. This shift happens at the level of self-image that psychologists call the self-schema, which is a cognitive framework that helps you organize and interpret information about yourself. If you identify as someone who always fails, your brain will filter reality through that lens. If you begin to identify as strong, confident, or able to change, your behavior, attention, and decisions will shift to match that. This is helped along by cognitive dissonance, a term coined by psychologist Leon Festinger in 1957. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort we feel when our actions don't align with our identity or beliefs. So if you start behaving like a confident person, but your internal identity still says, "I'm insecure," your brain will want to resolve that tension, either by reverting to old habits or updating your identity to match your new actions. This means small behavioral changes like standing up straighter, speaking with more certainty, or telling people what you want, create internal shifts in your identity over time. This isn't just theory. It's something everyone can put into practice. Viktor Frankl, a neurologist who survived the Holocaust, wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where you edit your ego, or your sense of self-esteem and self-importance. Consciously embodying a new reaction is where you change the self you become." And neuroscience backs this up. Each time you choose a different reaction, you stimulate neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to rewire itself. Repeated behaviors neurologically strengthen the pathways associated with that identity. With consistency, you're not just imagining change, you're building it neuron by neuron. So if you practice staying calm under pressure, optimistic in uncertainty, or focused in chaos, your brain will start making those traits your default mode. That's how the imagined version of you becomes the actual you, through repetition and neural reinforcement. In other words, successful manifestation isn't simply about scripting or visualizing your intentions. These are only tools meant to change your assumptions. Because if your inner narrative is, "This always happens to me," "I never get what I want," then without even realizing it, you'll unconsciously make certain decisions that prove that. That's pure science. It's the brain trying to conserve energy by repeating known patterns with expected results. In neuroscience, this is sometimes referred to as predictive coding. Your brain uses past experiences to generate expectations for what's likely to happen next. And because your brain is always trying to minimize surprise, it prefers outcomes that feel familiar, even if they are disappointing or negative. That's why changing your assumptions and self-concept is so hard. Your brain is wired to trust what it already knows. So no, manifestation isn't magic that you can do entirely from your bedroom, but it is something you start entirely in your brain. When you change the story you live from, the world seems to change too. Not because you summon the universe or new things are happening, but because you're finally allowing yourself to view the story from a new angle. Now you're capable of living that story. That's what people mean when they say the brain can't distinguish imagination from reality, because imagination is your perception of reality. Have you heard of the studies done on mental rehearsal, like those practiced by athletes and musicians? They show that imagining an experience activates nearly the same brain regions as actually doing the activity. That means when you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, your brain starts priming your body and nervous system for that version of you to exist, which shifts your focus to that outcome and makes you more likely to actually succeed. This is exactly what track and field star Gabby Thomas said she did to achieve her dream of Olympic gold. In an interview in 2025, she said that she spent a full week envisioning the race and writing down on her phone that she would be an Olympic champion, repeating it about 500 times. Those are affirmations, and they reinforced her self-concept as a winner. So is manifestation real? Yes, just not in the magical way some people want to believe. It's not wishful thinking. It's pattern recognition. It's belief in motion. The power of the brain. Ego edited in real time. So try changing your inner dialogue to something that matches the life of who you want to become. And remember, you don't attract what you want. You just see what you're conditioned to see, and that becomes your reality. But this self-concept is malleable when you consistently act as if you're already a new version of yourself. And because your thoughts and your ability to change them are instant, manifestation is instant. This is Ego Edit, and this is just the beginning. Until next time.